I may or may not have spent way too much GP on this armor set, but its effects looked too cool for me to stay away. So today I'm going to be giving my initial thoughts on this new tier 95 magic armor set. So first off, I do have to mention this armor set looks pretty sick in my opinion. I usually don't expect much cosmetic value from new armor sets coming into game, but this one definitely surprised me. And for those who don't know, this is called the Tumeken's Resplendence armor. It is tier 95 power magic armor, and it has 3 different set bonuses. The first set bonus is that Sunshine will no longer increase the damage of your magic attacks, but switch that over to base ability damage by 50%. In short, this means that things like bleeds will be boosted, weapon poison will be boosted, and a couple other things will be boosted by your Sunshine rather than just flat out magic attacks, which is really strong because now the wand spec here is going to get buffed inside of Sunshine, whereas before it wasn't really worthwhile to press other than the initial hit buff. And also things like your Corrupt Blast and your Combust are also going to get buffed. Overall, it is an interesting setup for an armor passive, but it is nice to see. The only thing I haven't tested yet is to see whether Maniacal stacks in with Sunshine now because they changed how the damage calc works, but from what I've been told, that isn't the case yet. Although we could just take a detour to Wars real quick and test this, because before the 15% damage increase from Maniacal was not working inside of Sunshine. So if I go over to a dummy here, I hit max hit mode, and I drop a Sunshine, I just use something like a D breath as 65, 66. And then if I go ahead and pop Maniacal, we will get the level buff, and that'll increase our damage. 66, 61. So the 15% is not working because that's obviously smaller. That's a smaller difference than 15% is going to make. Though unfortunately, Maniacal still does not stack inside of Sunshine, but it's still a strong aura to be using regardless for accuracy and for the raw damage from the level buff that you get. But that is the first set effect when you wear at least 3 pieces of the armor set. When you add another armor piece on and you're at a total of 4, Asphyxiate deals 25% less damage, but hits once every 0.6 seconds or every game tick for a total of 8 hits. So yes, Asphyxiate technically is doing less damage per hit, but you're getting double the number of hits. So if my mental math is adding up, that is a 50% damage increase in the same span of time. But essentially it has turned Asphyxiate into rapid fire, but it is still a bit stronger, and it really helps out on adrenaline with magic. I'll get into the concerns people have with this armor set later on and comparing it to the other two, but suffice to say, 2 8-hit asphyxes inside of a Sunshine gives you more than enough potential crit chance for gaining adrenaline. Now the last effect here, if you wear all 5 pieces, in my opinion is the most underwhelming part, and that is if you fully channel an asphyx, your next non-channeled ability will get a 50% crit strike damage buff. It's not nearly as strong as it seems. It's not just a flat out 50% damage increase on your next ability, and the 9-second part there, that just means you have 9 seconds to consume the buff. It only buffs one ability. It's not like the Dracolich effect where you hit rapid fire and then get a duration of time for that damage buff. It's literally just for one thing. So what I'll do is, if I'm wearing the full 5 piece, what I'll do is channel the asphyx and then maybe hit a G-Conk into an Omni Power, so that way the Omni Power claims the crit strike damage buff, but it's still getting additional crit chance from G-Conk. And that's all the armor set does. Now it doesn't sound like a whole lot, it sounds like kind of obscure stuff, but what does it actually look like in practice? Well, the first place I went ahead and tested this out was at Raksha. Magic Camp Raksha has been in kind of a awkward spot before amascut release. With Elite Tech and Carapac wrist straps, we're even tossing on the Masterwork boots and gloves in order to get the little bit of extra damage that those give. I found pool skips without getting any uber heals to be rather inconsistent. I could wait for the shadows to spawn and then click those and get a pool skip that way, but by that point it's like the enrage is way up. It's not really a true pool skip. But with this armor set, I was able to absolutely fly through Raksha. I was seeing kill times in the 120s to the 130s. I'm sure some of the more talented magicians in game will be able to get Grandmaster with this armor set. At one point I had, I believe, a 33-second phase into phase 4, and overall it was very strong at Raksha. This is going to be my new farming method for this boss, as it allows for improv. It's not quite a tick perfect thing. There is rotation to be done and follow, but it's not as tick perfect as, say, a range kill is. Range is still the faster farming method by far, so if you're going for absolute kills per hour, run the range method. But if you're looking for something to change up the pace and not lose too much on kill per hour and allow a bit of improv, definitely give this magic armor a shot. Now, the eagle-eyed among you probably noticed that this armor has a charging setup on it. Every single armor piece has charging on it, meaning for the first 9 seconds of equipping, you don't get the bonuses. And at first, I thought this is absolutely going to kill hybrid. I'm not gonna bother with it. However, the effects apply retroactively. At least the sunshine buff does apply retroactively, so if you toss on your armor set and hit sunshine, once the charging has been satisfied, it will switch that sunshine over from magic attack damage increase to base ability damage increase, even if you've already pressed the sunshine button. Same thing for asphyxiate. If you're trying to build up, say you've hit like a meteor and you swap over to your magic gear real quick and you Gricko up for a Dren, maybe hit a couple basics before sun, the armor set will be charged by the time you'd want to asphyxiate anyway. So it's essentially a non-issue as long as you swap over to the magic gear for Gricko after a meteor strike when you're doing hybrid. Now, the only thing you have to keep in mind is that the base ability damage with charging does not retroactively apply to bleeds that have already been cast. This is the one kind of pain point here, and this also applies if you have charged the armor set but you put a wand spec on before you start sun. Even if you stall a wand spec and released with sun, it's not going to get the buffed damage because it was technically cast before sunshine was deployed. So make sure to cast all of your bleeds after you have pressed the sunshine button. And for testing out hybrid, the first place I went to was Art Glacor, as this is a boss that I habitually use mage melee hybrid, and I gotta say it worked just fine. I didn't really notice any differences other than having a really nice asphyx and the general damage buff from wand spec, and it seemed to fit pretty seamlessly into a more so improv hybrid rotation. If you're really trying to plan a tick perfect rotation, charging might throw a couple wrenches in the works, but for just going out and using hybrid and using off style crit buffs to get some additional benefits and play more of a improv style like I do, especially at somewhere like Glacor, it fit in seamlessly to the rotations I was using. Now at Glacor, I was just using Cinderbane gloves and a 4-piece set, so I wasn't getting the 5th bonus, but honestly, I didn't really notice it much on Omni Power. I'll compare the different armor sets Magic has right now at the end of this video once I get through the boss testing portion, but suffice to say, it fit seamlessly into a hybrid rotation. I haven't really noticed too much. I do have to just make a mental note and swap into my magic gear earlier than I do. Before, I would just keep my melee gear on and do a Dren building up for sunshine that way, but now after meteor strike, I go ahead and swap into my magic gear. Now, in order to see how much bleed damage I could get from the wand spec, I went over to Carapac to just see what I could get from it. Carapac in hybrid is mostly a melee fight at this point. You Zerk phase 1, 3, and 4, but you do use magic on phase 2, and I wanted to see what the wand spec could actually do. For doing some Carapac, I believe the wand spec was bleeding about 14.5k damage because it was getting the 50% damage increase from sunshine, and then I'd press metamorph because time warp pops and then get a 66% damage increase from that, and both of them stacked on the wand spec. Now, for some reason, metamorph seems to retroactively buff bleeds when it's pressed, but sunshine doesn't right now. I'm not quite sure why that is, but still almost 15k damage per bleed hit is absolutely wild, and this set does add even more consistency into the magic portion of hybrid Carapac. Now, the last place I went to was Sanctum of Rebirth, and it performed just fine. I didn't really notice anything too much different other than the fact that Scarab Skip was pretty free, and I was killing P1 and I believe it's phase 2 fast enough to where I really couldn't properly set up my Sunshine to delete the first dog very quickly and then dive surge over to the next one and kill it before the first Uber heal. Now, that's just poor planning on my part. I am not the leading expert by any means on Magic Camp Sanctum, but the armor set felt strong, and the only thing I will note is that I usually run 3-piece Masterwork, 2-piece Elite Tech when I was doing Magic Sanctum, and being that this is power armor, I forgot I don't have the Masterwork effect, so I definitely have tanked a couple of squares that I probably shouldn't have and almost fell over, whereas Masterwork Bleed, I'm used to just being able to face tank stuff with Vitpot, no problem, but that's more so a positioning and skill issue, so it is what it is. It definitely worked out here. And last but certainly not least, I did test this at amascut, and just like at Glacore and Carapac, the hybrid option performed just fine. I was doing quite a bit of damage and I was having quite a bit of fun using this whole armor set, and it performed just fine. If you want to do a bunch of amascut and you have infinite GP lying around, pick up the armor set and send it. And that brings up the elephant in the room with this armor set, and that is the cost. As you can see here, I paid quite a pretty penny for it. In fact, 8.3 billion of those pretty pennies. Do I think this armor set is worth 8.3 bill? Absolutely not. I would not recommend anyone buy it right now while it is still under the quote-unquote release prices. It is staying quite a bit more stable than I thought it was. I thought it'd be crashing a lot more by now, but there doesn't seem to be that many coming into the game. I'm not seeing a bunch of world broadcasts for the armor pieces. I might see like maybe one a day, and I know a lot of people are farming this boss, so I don't think it's a lack of effort on the community part. I do think they're just pretty rare to see. Now, this is also probably because a lot of people are doing normal mode, and I suspect the drop rate on normal mode is quite rare for most of these items, and also the boss being a proper group boss, it's probably being pretty restrictive on who can actually kill it because it does require good coordination and teamwork, although normal mode is relatively free, at least from my perspective. But if you can pick up this armor set for, I'd say anywhere from the 2 to even 4 bill mark, it would absolutely be worth it. And now what most people are wondering is it worth it over Elite Tech? And the answer is absolutely. Raksha itself proved to me that this armor set dishes out a lot more damage than any Elite Tech build that I've been able to do so far. The 8-hit is fixed, and the damage increase from the bleeds is worth well more than the sum of their parts in a magic rotation. Plus, if you're the type to add temporal gambling into your rotation, you will get a higher percentage on that. I believe it is 15.7% for the entire set if you're wearing like the whole 5-piece. Now, what I've seen a few people say, and I tend to agree with them, is most people I think are going to run the 4-piece setup and get the asphyx buff and skip out on the 5-piece bonus because it is pretty weak right now. Maybe it'll get reworked, but it's not really worth it in my opinion. And I see people either say bringing an Elite Tech helm along, or if you don't want to pay for one of the more expensive pieces like the body or the legs, I could see people using one Elite Tech piece in there to get a 2% crit chance in with the 4-piece armor set. Although with how adrenaline efficient the rotation is when using this, which my general principle for this armor set inside of a Sunshine rotation was 2 asphyxes, 2 wild magics, an omni power, and a tendrils, and then if I can cram an Ibin or 2 in there, then I'll go ahead and do that. But this armor set is incredibly adrenaline efficient and allows for quite a bit of improv if you need to add in some defensives or something like that. And I honestly didn't really notice the 6% crit chance gone because I was still using things like Calgarian Demon and my Grim, which is a lot of crit chance on their own. And at Raksha specifically, I was using normals and getting 4% crit chance there. there. So honestly, I had more than enough, especially with the 2 asphyxes giving me 16 potential hits to crit. And I think at most places, if you're going to magic camp with this armor, I would definitely say go with Channeler's Ring and get a lot of crit chance on those asphyxes, the G-conks, everything that you're doing, as it's probably going to average out in more damage. In hybrid, I'm not going to bother ring swapping. I think ring swapping is pretty annoying, especially when doing like a full 5-way armor swap and prayers and whatnot. But before I yap on even more, I am going to call the video here. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate the viewership as always. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see you next time for the next video. Peace.